The Modern Workforce, a mediator's conversation with business guru Hank Moore, part of the series Titans of Mediation with seasoned mediator trainer Dr. Barbara Manuso. That is our topic for today.
Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent.
Hi, everyone. This is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator working throughout Florida and Texas.
And I am Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland. And this is where we are now together. It's a pleasure to be hosting Mac here in Poland.
And I'm Dr. Barbara Sunderland Manuso, and we're based in Houston, Texas, and Newport, Rhode Island. And I'm a trainer, mediator, and arbitrator. And today I am delighted to be able to introduce one of the major gurus in business, Hank Moore, who's also based in Houston, Texas, but his reach is absolutely worldwide. And Hank has had over 6,000 clients that he has provided services for on a executive level. He has worked with over 100 of the 500 Fortune 500 companies, and his resume is stellar. He not only is a historian, having met everybody you can imagine in history, from pop culture to politics to being a futurist. So we are very, very honored to have you join us today, Hank, and to help inform mediators and to provide your information as a cross-reference and support for the mediation community. So welcome, Hank. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My honor to be with all three of you. Yeah.
So,
Awesome.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Please.
I'm sorry, Mac. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, Hank, could you tell us a little bit about yourself before you get started?
I work with, from a business standpoint, I work with businesses of all sizes. As Barbara said, I've worked with a number of the Fortune 500. I've reorganized a lot of them: Disney, Marriott, Hewlett Packard, AT&T, Texaco, United Way of America, and I've worked with tons of small businesses. So a lot of what I do is strategic plans, written about probably 400 of those, advised companies through it, done leadership work with different companies at different sizes. And as someone who's been at it for several decades, what I was always seeing when I'd go into organizations, a business big picture overview is where you look at the entire organization and then you look at the pieces as they relate to the whole. Problem with most business consultants is they want to sell companies on what they have to sell, not necessarily what companies understand. And a lot of times in advising boards of directors and senior management, I find myself and honored to be in that position of helping them get greater understanding of what the people are trying to do. Because, people that sell training services they need a champion to tell the management the importance of training. And the same thing with people that provide technology services and marketing. And that's part of the problem, is most people in organizations do not communicate beyond their niche. And that gets into one of the workforce problems, is how to start thinking bigger picture. So as a result of all of that I'd seen in organizations, and you go in sometimes and they say, fix those people. Usually it's the people who said, fix those people, who needs fixing. And so it's a matter of understanding bigger relationships that businesses need to forge in order to move forward. A number of years ago, as a result, I hold about probably 20 trademarks for business concepts, and they're all in I summarize them all in one chapter of one of my books, a Big Picture of Business Book 2. And what the signature one is called the business tree, and the business tree, which is in that diagram right there, is looking at any organization like a living, breathing organism. And businesses are not pie charts. They don't sit on a wall. And there's 7 key parts of business, of any business, running any business, any organization. And that includes nonprofit organizations. And there's 7, parts of it. Branch 1 is core business. What business you're in, why you got in it, how you're going to stay in it. That should occupy 12% of the attention and planning by businesses. Branch 2 is running the business, how you take that widget and then take it to market, and how you operate a widget making organization. That's branch 2. That's another 12%. Then you get into financial, accounting, all of that, financial, banking, relationships, understanding the money aspect. That's 10%. Problem with most businesses, and this is where they get into the problem, that 24, 26, that percentage there, 12 plus 12 plus 10, that's 34%. That 34% becomes 100% to them. And that's where their businesses start to fail. They forget the biggest branches, branch 4, people, training, HR, all of that. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Research tells us the American workforce, and that's what we're talking about in this segment, the workforce, it needs 3 the amount of training than they're presently getting in order to even be competitive, much less move forward. And then you get into the other big part of the business tree, branch 5, which is business development, advertising, marketing, sales, research, that wonderful topic that I believe in and all of us do. But how many small business people, they think that's an expendable resource. That's what they always cut. That's what they don't want to invest in or even understand. And it would be so easy as to have experts explain to them what some of those trends are. So, I explained to a lot of businesses that 2% of the businesses in the world have a strategic plan. That means that 98% do not. Is it any reason that they go bad? No. And what a lot of those organizations think is a business strategy is really nothing more than accounting figures and a marketing slogan. And those of us who do strategic planning with companies, that's all what we call back of the book stuff. That's part of the plan, but it's not the plan. And then, so all employees and organizations, to summarize, fit on one of those 5 branches: core business, running the business, financial, people, and business development. Problem is they don't ever understand the relationship of what they do to the other branches. They don't interface. They don't communicate. Biggest problem in the workforce is lack of communication and understanding and trying to understand. And then, so it's all those 5 parts. When I do strategic plans and consultation with top management, is to get to understand the relationship of each of the niches. The people in the niches are so ingrained in the niches that they can't see the other niches, much less the big picture. So if you ask some of those people, they think their niche is big picture in their limited education and their limited scope. It's not. Then you get into category 6 on my business tree, which is what I call body of knowledge. That's another 7%. You can't have a tree without having a trunk. And it's understanding the relationship of all the parts to each other, the understanding of all the organization in the outside community, because what other people do outside our companies can hurt us and sometimes kill us. That's what happened for some companies during COVID. Although I contend that about 25% of the companies that went out of business during COVID probably should have. They weren't that established enough. They didn't plan. They didn't strategize. They didn't do what it took to go long term. And then the last part of the business tree, category 7, is big picture, understanding that there has to be a big picture. And you can't have a plan without planning. And sometimes you've got to be very helpful to organizations. You've got to be gentle. You've got to sometimes charm them into planning and having think that planning is not a punishment. It's a reward for your future. So it's just all those parts of it. And that's pretty much what I've done most of my career. And the things that I've looked at, I look from the overall perspective and then down to the pieces as they relate to the bigger picture, and then how to educate people in the pieces to get thinking bigger picture, because those who do that will be the next generation of leadership, next generation of management, the next generation of influencers, and it just goes on and on and on for that. And they'll be, and all of those kind of people, us included, were products of mentoring. We picked and chose great lessons from some of the greatest mentors. I had many of them, and then with the understanding, you got to pass it on. That's why I'm glad to visit with you on this program, is to share perspectives that people would not get anywhere else.
And I appreciate that, Hank, and that's why we invited you to come and to share your information with us today. As a trainer for 30 years now, mediators and arbitrators, and of course our focus in this program is more for the mediators,
Right.
But it's ADR, alternative dispute resolution. As an industry, we do teach that in our class, and people are surprised, and I can tell it passes over their head when I mention about writing their business plan. And they have even free resources to go to, like the Small Business Administration. And of course, we mention you because you're the one that can fine tune. And if they read the books and read what you've written, it gives them more of a pathway. And just because being a mediator is a self-employed entrepreneur doesn't mean that you don't have to have the vision, or you shouldn't have the vision of a big company. Because if you want to succeed, like you said, you can't just take a training, sit by the phone and hope that somebody calls you. They won't. And so it's very exciting. And I hope people listening from the mediation community join us in this leap and understanding of what you've just stated on how it does support any business. And especially you've worked from the biggest, but even for the smallest, there's still that same application. So we value having you today.
I love the small ones too. People say to me all the time, "Oh, you've worked with all these big companies," and yes, proud of it. But those smaller ones, I have found that in small business, the average small business principal and in small businesses, every employee has to count. Mm-hmm. And that's an important thing, how they nurture and mentor those coming up the way. And that's, I feel the same way about nonprofit organizations. Every job counts. You can't have fat in the system. And it's just really important. You showed on the screen book 1. That's book 1, Big Picture of Business. This is book 2, which came out about a year later. This is book 3, which includes just all kinds of interesting stuff. There's a formula to the books. There's always things about the workforce. There's always a chapter or two about collaborations, partnering, and joint venturing, which is kind of the cousin of mediation. It's understanding how other people think, and yeah, those are the three. And
and you were nominated for a Nobel Prize on these, were you not?
Not Nobel, it's Pulitzer.
Oh, Pulitzer. I'm so sorry. That's correct.
Yeah.
I thank you for correcting.
Nobel is what.
There you go. That's wonderful.
Some of my mentors, like Winston Churchill and Eleanor Roosevelt, were nominated for the Nobel Prize, but and they were early mentors of mine. But the other, yeah, I've had my last 6 books have been Pulitzer nominated. They're on the wall and back there, beginning with Pop Icons and Business Legends, followed by Nonprofit Legends, and followed by Big Picture Business Book 1, Book 2, Book 3, and Book 4 just got nominated. And
wow.
So
it's very exciting, and you're bringing a lot to the table. And even the big companies all started as little companies once upon a time. And the leap and the connection for the mediator is the mediators are often called into these companies to mediate. And it's very often something between or among their employees. And so when you talk about the communication and you talk about their big picture and the vision, that is something that probably has become conflicted, which is where the mediator's starting point is for the big business. They need it for their business, and they need to be able to help their clients as they go forward.
Biggest problems with the workforce, that's what we're talking about in this segment, that works in organizations. They don't understand what it takes to make it long term. They don't act as though they would one day be. And there's in Big Picture Book 1, I have a chapter, there's 30 chapters in each of those books. And that includes Big Picture Book 4, the current book. I wasn't going to write a 4th book, but I had to do business recovery since COVID, which we'll talk about another time. And I had to do all those. And I wrote what I thought when I wrote it 4 or 5 years ago was a boring back of the book chapter that I didn't think anyone would read, called Supply Chain Management. Suddenly, that is a big thing. And supply chain management, we now know, I've done a lot of Zooms and media interviews on that subject. And all it really is understanding how you work together with other people, how you cooperate, how you borrow ideas from different companies to come out with a common meeting ground. And which I learned most of that in my earlier days working with nonprofit organizations, because that's the way they stay in business, is learning how to creatively work together and make do and move forward. I have found, and then you get into other issues of the workforce. We have 6 generations right now in the workforce. That's the most ever in world history. You've got the greatest generation, people born through 1926. You have the silent generation, people born 1927 through 45. You have the boomers, which is born 1946 through 64. Then you got Generation X, born 1965 through 1983. Then you got Generation Y, the millennials, born for the next 18 years after that, 1984 through 2002. Then you get into the current generation that's now entering the workforce, Generation Z. And the next generation, Z is people being born this year. And after this year, they're going to have to go to a Greek alphabet to name the next generation. So Z would be people born essentially from 2004 through this year. That's Generation Z. So coming up next
My
year,
gosh.
there's always going to be babies. Problem with a lot of generations, how do I say this very nicely, but truthfully, they are very stuck in the old ways. There's nothing more permanent than change. History repeats itself. Uh, that's why I get into music and other issues. If people would learn some of those great lessons through the entertainment world and take them into business, we'd be better off. And if they would learn how to work together, how to think new creative ideas. As someone who thinks creative ideas for a living, I can tell you some of the best new ideas are old ideas with new coats of paint. And how you go into strategies when we do strategic plans, and when we counsel top executives. And of course, I tell them, stop thinking like an executive and start thinking more like a leader, which is many notes above that. And I've got there's 30 categories of the workforce. And most people start out as something, and they evolve, and they grow, but they're not thinking bigger picture. Most of them aren't going to make it.
Okay,
And that's the
Hank,
problem.
speaking of which, the modern workforce, because you address the generations, you addressed your immense work. But when we talk about modern workforce, what do you mean by that? What it covers? And how do we, as mediators, can make practical use of this concept?
The modern workforce doesn't have the communication skills that they need. Communication. I've got chapters in each of the books about various aspects of communication. We have, and it's not to say why couldn't younger workers be perfect like we were. We weren't perfect. Most of us got very old and sedentary at way too young age. A lot of people in the workforce after age 40, they don't learn, they don't want to grow. And for young people, we want to teach them how to think longer term, how to market. In marketing circles, they say create your own brand, is having a strategic plan for yourself, for your career, and what you're going to do. And during the COVID era, a lot of people lost the opportunity to train, to grow, and we have to really think about how much the last 2 to 3 years have set everything back. They set education in schools back, another subject. They set a lot of things back. But the main issue, the main advice is, don't think that because it's a whole new era and technology is going to create everything for us, we have to manage technology, understand which ones help us and which ones grow. And it's not just, oh, let's get back to the way things used to be. Biggest problem with business is two things, and two things really only. And the success that other people have. Oh, I'm just like so and so, but I'm better. Why? How do you know? How do you plan to be sustaining that better? What is better? And so we have to ask a lot of those questions about communication. Where are you getting your business advice from? Most people get their business advice from hearsay. And worst of all, they get it from the internet. All these great resources that are out there, they don't get taught to think big picture. Very often, it's always the latest thing. And that's why they go around in the workforce and they spout out words like solutions, which I consider personally the most dumbest word in the business vocabulary. Solutions was a techie term out of the 90s that basically peddled technology. It's whatever people are selling, that's a solution. Research tells us that most business advisors and consultants, there's only 2% of them that are real advisors. Most of them are vendors selling something, and they use terms like solutions to peddle to unsuspecting people. So for the workforce to live and grow, think of it as a new world. Think of it as a new frontier. You can use all those great expressions, you know, It can be, it will be. I believe the greatest opportunities are now and in the future. As someone who does write a lot of history, as you know, Barbara, in fact,
That's correct.
that is my new book is Pop Music Legends, which seemingly
Well,
has
that's
nothing
another subject, and we're going to get on.
another
We're
time.
going to be on for two other podcasts, and we'll have an opportunity to talk. But our takeaway right now, which we really, really value, is that it's a new day in the neighborhood, and
Right.
people do need to look at their business opportunities and plan their business opportunities with strategy and to move forward so that they are seeing a big picture. So Guru Hank Moore, again, you have brought a treasure trove of information for the mediation community, whether they're helping one of their clients or whether they are building their own mediation business. So thank you very much for joining us today. And everybody, thank you for listening to Menuso Musing.
Right. We'll see you back shortly.